Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the internet, the John Campea Show. Coming to you from right here on my YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea. And man, there's a hell of a lot of stuff going on here today. Now, we have a number of things to talk about. Angelina Jolie's got a new movie besides Maleficent 2 that she's got coming out. That's going on. James Marsden has joined the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. We got a whole bunch of other things, but let's go right off the top with this. We've known for some time, like years and years and years, that they've wanted to get a Top Gun 2 movie made. So they've been trying for a long time. And then, of course, a number of years ago, director of the original Top Gun, Tony Scott, died, which was under completely tragic circumstances, which was awful. That put it in question, and it's been delayed and delayed and delayed, but they kept on talking about it. Now, I got to the point where I didn't even think they were really going to do a Top Gun 2 anymore. But it got announced. Tom Cruise has taken to social media with "feel the need," of course, the first part of this phrase, the need for speed, and puts in there hashtag day one. So it looks like Maverick is back in the cockpit again. It looks like they have actually started shooting Top Gun 2. Now, what do I think about this? I'm honestly not sure. Here's the thing. I, like everybody else, love the first Top Gun movie. I mean, I was just a kid when that thing came out. It got me buying model fighter aircraft. It got me like all that kind of stuff. And Goose, talk to me, Goose. But anyway, and absolutely adored it. But as the years went on, I started to wonder more and more, how relevant could a Top Gun 2 movie be today, in the day of pilotless drones and all that sort of stuff, when we don't see a lot of air-to-air combat and all that kind of thing. So I don't know. I mean, clearly they must have a great idea for it, or else they wouldn't proceed with it. But it's another great example of an aging, although aging wonderfully, great movie star, in this case Tom Cruise, going back to a film and franchise that was one of his pieces of bread and butter. Like, we've seen Schwarzenegger go back to Terminator. We've seen Stallone go back to Rocky and Rambo. Now we're seeing Cruise go back to Top Gun. And it's interesting. So I am very, very curious. I mean, because like I said, today is a different era than 1986. So I'm going to be really, really curious to see what their basic story is here. I'm assuming that Maverick is now assuming the role that Tom Skerritt played in the original. Like, he's probably the headmaster now of the Top Gun flight school. But who knows what they got going on? We don't have a lot of details right now. All we know is that they're shooting the damn movie. Now, let's go on to another thing off the top. Whereas one movie is now actually shooting, there's another movie that was getting ready to shoot and once again is not shooting. You guys know that they have been trying to get a Crow remake going forever. They've gone through no less than 5 leading men, including a Luke Evans, including Tom Hiddleston, including a whole big long list of names of people who were attached to play the Crow, then they left. The new one attached, then they left. Then Jason Momoa came on board to play Crow in the new remake, right? And now, today, they are 5 weeks away from starting to shoot, and then this news drops. It's off again. The Crow remake grounded again. Jason Momoa and director Corin Hardy have left the project as of last night. From the best of my understanding, they've gone. Now, apparently, what has triggered this is that Sony, who was the worldwide distributor for the film, they've had what they're calling creative and financial differences with the dude in charge who holds the rights and who's financing the film. Sony and this dude have had creative and financial differences, and it was expected that Sony was about to drop the Crow remake as its worldwide distributor. Apparently, on the heels of that, Momoa and the director have also decided to walk. So once again, the Crow remake is off again. And I'm sure it'll be back on again at some point. But my God, this is like a DC situation. It's like, now this guy's starring in, no, now this guy, now this guy's directing, no, now this guy's directing, it's on, it's off, and now it's gone. I should have said, there's been no film in the DC universe that's been as plagued as The Crow. So that's an unfair comparison. But yeah, so apparently once again, the whole damn thing is off. And I don't know if this thing's ever going to get made. Maybe they'll just get desperate enough and make it a straight-to-home video. I am curious what these creative differences were. Like, I'm wondering if Sony was looking at this film that was coming together and saying, this movie you're putting together sucks, or you're not investing, you're not putting enough money into the budget of this movie. Whatever it is, Sony clearly didn't have faith that it was going to work. So they were about to back out as the distributor, which caused Momoa and the director to back out as well. So More drama for the good folks over at the Crow reboot. All right, guys, well, listen, there's a whole bunch of other things going on in the world of movie news, so let's get you started right now with the movie news feed. First up, new images from the upcoming Disney animated film Wreck-It Ralph 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet, have landed. Well, on the internet. The new film opens in theaters on November 21st and takes the oafish video game bad guy, voiced by John C. Reilly, out of the neighborhood arcade and into the World Wide Web with best friend Vanellope von Schweetz, played by Sarah Silverman, the kid princess of the candy-coated Sugar Rush game. The first Wreck-It Ralph was an absolute triumph, pulling in over $471 million at the box office while scoring an impressive critic rating of 87%. Okay, so right off the top, I think these images look great. I mean, they look completely wonderful. I especially really like the one image of Vanellope with the Disney princesses. I can only imagine what kind of scene that's going to be. And now look, that first Wreck-It Ralph film was brilliant. It is still one of the most preposterous things to me that Wreck-It Ralph didn't win Best Animated Picture at the Oscars that year. It instead went to Brave. Now, Brave wasn't terrible, but there's no way that Brave was better than Wreck-It Ralph. Wreck-It Ralph is so endearing. Now, my one complaint about the franchise is that, kind of a little bit like Incredibles 2, although not nearly as bad, is why is it taking 6 years to get a sequel in the theater? And I understand, I didn't want them to rush out one the very next year, or maybe even 2 years, but like 3 or 4 years maybe, but whatever. I'm just happy it's coming. And the other exciting thing here is this. With new official images being released, that's usually, not always, but usually a sign that a new trailer is about to drop. And I love the first trailer, so let's see where this one goes. Next up, and just a heads up to everyone, this next story contains a significant spoiler for Avengers Infinity War. So if you're one of the 7 people left in the country who still hasn't seen that movie, you may want to tune out of this next story. Now, as most of the rest of us know, the ending of Avengers Infinity War left the future of a number of characters in question, not the least of which was the status of Dave Bautista's Guardians of the Galaxy character, Drax the Destroyer. However, in a recent interview, Bautista said the following: "I got a lot of text saying, 'I can't believe you're dead. Your character is dead.' They were really like heartbroken. And I was like, I'm gonna be in 4. I'm gonna be back in Guardians 3. I don't know how they're bringing me back, but yeah, somehow I'm going to make it because as far as I know, I'm going to be in Guardians 3. So I have to be back." Avengers 4 hits theaters on May 19th, 2019, while Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is scheduled for sometime in 2020. Now, this doesn't come as a surprise to anybody. Like, for all of us, and again, if you haven't seen Avengers Infinity War, you shouldn't be watching at this point. But, I mean, when you understand who died at the end of Avengers Infinity War, you knew they're all coming back. I mean, first of all, we already knew Guardians 3 was coming. We suspected Dave Bautista would be there. We also suspect he's going to be in Avengers 4. Now he's kind of confirming that, but that's really no big surprise. Now, had Spider-Man not died at the end, had Black Panther not died at the end, maybe we would really be questioning whether some of these other characters would actually be coming back. But this is the worst kept secret in Hollywood. These people are clearly coming back, and Dave Bautista just kind of affirms that. And I don't think any of us ever thought for a second that we weren't going to get Guardians of the Galaxy 3. We know James Gunn is already working on this thing. It's going to be great. I really like Dave Bautista in the role of Drax. I loved him in the first one. My one complaint, though, and you guys have heard me talk about this, is that ever since Guardians 1, they have mishandled Bautista. They have mishandled Drax the Destroyer. Like in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Drax the Destroyer has no action scenes other than the opening credits scene. In Avengers 3, he's barely used at all. He's supposed to be this guy genetically created to destroy Thanos, and he's barely used in that way at all. He's just being relegated to comic relief. Now, Dave Bautista is great at that, but I'd like to see them get him a little bit more involved, both in Avengers 4 and in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Let's see if they step him up. Next up, speaking of Dave Bautista, the actor has just been set to star in the upcoming action comedy Dogtown. The project is being written by John Wick 2 screenwriter Kyle Ward. According to Deadline, Dogtown is about the following. Bautista will play Mac Delgado, a professional bounty hunter tough enough to be called a body bagger. Things take a turn for him when the teenage daughter he never knew he had turns up on his doorstep, hoping to reconnect with the father she lost a long time ago. The hope is to start production this fall. I am a massive fan of Dave Bautista. You will never meet a humbler, more gentle, more grateful dude that he gets to be in this business. The guy has the perfect attitude, and he is becoming the absolute template about how you should conduct yourself and how you should try to develop your career if you're coming into acting as a celebrity from another field. He's been taking smaller roles that are fitted to his strengths while hiding his weaknesses, while be getting more and more experience and doing more and more things, and eventually getting better and better at what he does. Now he's going to be able to start leading a few films, and he's got a couple on the docket that he's actually going to be the lead guy in now. This sounds like something that is the perfect next step for Dave Bautista. Here's hoping it works out as good as we're all crossing our fingers that it will. Next up, according to Variety, Angelina Jolie, who will next be seen in Maleficent 2, and David Oyelowo, best known for his role in Selma, are in negotiations to star in the live-action fantasy drama Come Away. Jolie and Oyelowo will play the parents of the brother and sister who became the protagonists of Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan. When their older brother dies in a tragic accident, they seek to save their parents from despairing over the losses, and are then forced to choose between home and imagination. Brenda Chapman, director and co-writer of Pixar's Academy Award-winning animated film Brave, which beat out Wreck-It Ralph, is directing the project. I'm really excited for this project for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, the synopsis sounds really nice. It sounds like it's both imaginative and endearing. The whole idea about a brother and sister duo who become the protagonists of these great fantasy stories that we know. Of course, Angelina is fantastic. I'm not really looking forward to Maleficent 2, but she did give a great performance in the first one, so I'm looking forward to her in that. She always turns in something great. Oh man, I always loved her in Wanted. I don't know why I brought that up right now, but she's great in Wanted. Anyway, and David, oh my God, not only was he great in Selma, but he was in Queen of Katwe with Lupita Nyong'o, and that movie is just damn special. He is such a terrific performer. Seeing these two together could be something really special. The synopsis sounds great. This sounds like it could be really good. And finally, as many of you know, a hybrid live-action/animated Sonic the Hedgehog movie is on the way, and now we know who will be the star. According to Variety, X-Men and Westworld star James Marsden will lead the film, which is currently slated to hit theaters on November 15th, 2019. Deadpool director Tim Miller will serve as the executive producer. The game features a hedgehog named Sonic on a quest to defeat Dr. Robotnik, a scientist who has imprisoned animals in robots and stolen magical Chaos Emeralds. You know what bothers me? And I say this as an incredibly boringly straight heterosexual male. There are some dudes out there you go, wow, that's a good looking dude. But then there are some dudes who are so good looking, it just makes you feel angry because you just feel like it makes you smaller. James Marsden is like one of these guys. I remember saying that to my wife. We were watching Westworld and going, it just pisses me off how good looking this dude is. I mean, like, share some of the wealth around a little bit. Anyway, I honestly don't know what to make of this. Is it going to be yet another long line of crappy video game movies? Although we did get Tomb Raider recently, and that actually wasn't bad. Or could this be like another Super Mario Brothers? I don't know. But look, adding a guy like James Marsden is a good step. It doesn't guarantee anything. Doesn't mean the script's good. Doesn't mean the movie's going to be good. Like I said, I'm very dubious about this whole thing. But they did attach a good talent. Okay, mark one thing up on the positive list. If they go really imaginative, if they go really fun, if they go really heavy to the comedy, maybe something like this could work. If they do something creative with their whole hybrid of live action and animation, maybe there's something special here. But there's also really high potential that this could just be, let's just go for the nostalgia. Let's just get anything up on screen. No one will really care. And that would be kind of unfortunate if they do. And that'll do it for today's installment of the Movie News Feed. And now you are all caught up to date on all the stuff going on in the world of movie news. Now let's jump over to our main topics today. And as always, our main topics are submitted by you guys. How do you get a topic or a question on the John Campea Show? It's simple. Just email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. Put the word topic in the subject line. And as always, guys, keep those emails to 90 words or less. Again, email me at john@thejohncampeashow.com. Put the word topic in the subject line and keep the emails to 90 words or less. All right, let's get to the first email today. And the first email today comes to us from Mary Ann Payton, who writes, "Hey John, first time emailer." Well, welcome, Mary Ann. "My significant other got me hooked on your show and I watch almost every day." Well, thank you so much. "So I don't know if this is a rumor or fact, but a reporter from Variety is tweeting that Penguin might be the villain for the new Batman movie, but that it's not for sure and could change. Forgive me if this sounds naive, but haven't they already supposedly been working on this for over a year? They still don't have a villain? How do you write a script if you don't know who your characters are? All right, thanks a lot for the question, Marianne. And so where this is all coming from, let's lay the groundwork here. Unceremoniously, Warner Brothers removed Ben Affleck from writing and directing the Batman. They got rid of his script and they brought in Matt Reeves. Matt Reeves, who is a terrific filmmaker. That was in February. All right, not this February, last February. So we're working on 16 months since that announcement thing. Now, where all this stuff is coming from is one of the reporters from Variety. Variety is one of the more reputable, most reliable sources out there. But Justin Kroll from Variety, he tweeted out the following. Here's what he wrote. He wrote, "Take this with a grain of salt, as things are constantly changing in the DCU, but I am hearing that the Penguin is possibly the choice to play the main villain in the Batman. Sources add, even if Reeves decides to go another route the studio could then make him the main villain in Birds of Prey." He goes on to write, "Reeves is still working on the script, so that could always change, but of the multiple Birds of Prey scripts submitted, one does have the Penguin as the main heavy. Either way, it seems Warner Brothers wants this character in the universe sooner rather than later." Okay. So there's a couple of possibilities here. Let's start with the first obvious one. Justin Kroll from Variety is just incorrect. He's wrong. That's one of the possibilities here, that he's just wrong. And that is probably the first thing we should mention, and that should be the overscaping thing. That there's a reason that Justin put this out on Twitter and didn't write a full article on this on Variety. So this could be something that's just completely, he's incorrect about. All right? I mean, he's not some dude, random anonymous dude on Reddit. This is Justin Kroll from Variety. But let's go with the first possibility here, that he's just incorrect about this and there's really nothing to talk about here, okay? So let's just say that right up front. That's the first possibility. Let's deep down and let's just talk about the possibilities if what he's saying is correct. If what he's saying is correct, I must admit, is majorly concerning to me. No, not because of the idea of a Penguin as a villain. I think a Penguin could be a very cool villain, especially if you go with like a No Man's Land version of Penguin. Penguin could be a very cool villain for a Batman film. Absolutely, he could. But here's what concerns me, okay? They don't have it locked down yet. Now, again, first possibility here, Justin's incorrect. Okay, so now that we've established that, let's move on and talk about, okay, what about the possibilities if he's correct? If he's correct, it's majorly concerning to me, because how can you be 16 months after the announcement that you've brought in Matt Reeves to write and direct a new Batman film, and you still don't have a lock on who your villain is? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, I tweeted that for a second last night, and then I saw the email that came in from Marianne and said, let me get rid of my tweet. We'll talk about it on the show tomorrow. But I put out on a tweet, it's like, wait a minute, 16 months later, and you don't have it locked down who your villain is? And I had some people write to me, say, John, he's just not rushing it. He's just not rushing it. Wait a minute, we're at time out here. 16 months. And you start with your characters. That's what you start with. Like, how are you writing a script without knowing who your characters are? That's the thing that confused me. And what really bothers me here is this, is that in all this time, Matt Reeves has had plenty of time on his hands to go and sign a big production deal with Netflix. So he's got that all done. On top of that, they even got the film he's going to be producing for the new film for Netflix he's already producing is already underway. He's had plenty of time to do that. So again, first possibility, let's not forget the umbrella statement here is Justin Kroll could be incorrect about this, in which case there's nothing to see here and there's no worries and there's nothing to talk about. But if he's not incorrect, this raises some red flags to me. So like, okay, wait a minute. Let's go with this. If he's got a script that, they could change what the villain is, then what that means is they've got such a generic script that you could just pull out whatever villain, drop whatever villain in. Because it's not really built around the characters. It's just a generic script, boom. That would be concerning. The other thing that's possibly concerning here is, well, what if this is a scenario? Again, we're speculating here, okay? What if this is a scenario where Matt Reeves has the story he wants to do and he wants Penguin, and Warner Brothers is roadblocking him, saying, wait a minute, we might want to use Penguin and Birds of Prey. So hold on a second there, Matt. What? Like if you're going to bring the guy in to do his movie, let him do his movie. So it's either, one, he's written a completely, again, this is all assuming that number one isn't true. You either writing a completely generic script that they can just swap in or out any villain they want at any time. Or number two, Warner Brothers is roadblocking him and getting in his way and interfering with him getting his movie done and getting this thing put together, which if you're going to boot Ben Affleck on it, and you should have stayed with Ben Affleck, but if you're going to boot him off and bring in a filmmaker the caliber of a Matt Reeves, you let him do his thing. Within certain constraints, sure, but we're 16 months in. Now remember, I talked about this a little while ago. I found out through some sources that Matt Reeves was supposed to submit a completed outline of the film back in October. And as of February, there was still nothing submitted. So they are way behind the schedule they had for themselves. Now, sometimes that can be good, sometimes that can be bad, so whatever. So again, let's look at this. Number one, Justin Kroll from Variety could be incorrect. And if that's the case, then all of this speculation is pointless. If that's the case, all the speculation is pointless. There could be a million other things going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. Remember, we always just see the tip of the iceberg with information, so that's what we have to talk about. But quite often, there's like a whole ton of information below the surface that we're not privy to yet that could open up a million other possibilities. So Justin could be wrong. They're really just dragging their asses on getting this thing done. They've written a completely generic script where, we don't need to have our villain locked down. We can just drop in whatever villain because the story's so generic. Warner Brothers might be interfering with Matt Reeves, not letting him get the thing done that he wants, maybe holding him up on what he wants to do. I mean, and there's a 15, 20, 30, 40,000 other possibilities. I'm just saying that if Kroll is correct, and that's a big if, but if he's correct, it's concerning. It's concerning to me. But who knows? We'll just have to wait till we see and get more information about this. You know what? Matt Reeves has been pretty good about responding to things online. So I wouldn't be surprised if Matt Reeves responds to this stuff in the next 24 to 48 hours. And then that might clear up the picture a whole hell of a lot. So let's just see where it goes. But it better not be a situation where Warner Brothers, if you're going to get rid of Ben Affleck and bring in Matt Reeves, let Matt Reeves do his thing. It better not be a situation where they're like roadblocking him, because that would be like completely frustrating. Anyway, let's move on to the second topic. And the second email today comes to us from Mack P, who writes, "Hello, John, big fan. Thank you so much, Mac. I've got a question regarding Pixar's upcoming Incredibles 2. What would it have to make in order for Disney to greenlight an Incredibles 3? Thanks, and bring on the filthy." To guarantee it? I don't know, because here's the thing. Disney and Pixar have already shown that just a big hit doesn't guarantee they're going to do another one. It certainly doesn't guarantee they're going to do another one quickly. Because the first Incredibles was a big hit. And we've waited 73 years for Incredibles 2 to finally come along. So, what kind of money would an Incredibles 2 have to make that just locks it, like seals the deal, firm, ironclad guarantees of an Incredibles 3? I would have to say probably $1 billion. John, are you saying it's not successful unless it makes $1 billion? No, of course it's successful. Even if it makes like $450 million, it's successful. And maybe they do a sequel at $500 million or $600 million or $700 million. But since they have shown that they aren't quick to jump to greenlight sequels or whatever, even if something's a big hit, I would say to absolutely 100% guarantee an Incredibles 3 gets made, it would probably have to join the $1 billion club. Now, keep this in mind. With all the incredible films that Pixar's ever done, only two Pixar films have ever joined the $1 billion club. And that's Toy Story 3 and Dory, Finding Dory. Finding Dory and Toy Story 3 are the only Pixar films ever to join the $1 billion club. So I think if Incredibles 2 hits that, and look what they're doing. We know they're going to be doing another Finding Nemo movie, and we know they're going to be doing another Toy Story movie. So if Incredibles can join that $1 billion club, I think that pretty much locks it that there will be an Incredibles 3. And there could be an Incredibles 3 even if they don't hit $1 billion. I'm just saying, if you're asking what would guarantee it, $1 billion would guarantee it. All right, last one of the day. And this one comes to us from The Dude. And The Dude writes, "Hey, John, you recently said that totally avoiding Freddie Mercury's sexuality in Bohemian Rhapsody would be a problem. But you've also stated that a filmmaker's job is not to be historically accurate, but to make what he thinks is the best movie possible, a la The Greatest Showman. What's the difference in the two cases?" All right, fair question, The Dude, but the difference is massive. When talking about, quite often the topic of movies based on true stories come up. And the inevitable discussion always comes up when a movie based on a true story comes up is about which parts were historically inaccurate, right? Which parts weren't accurate. And how much responsibility is on the filmmakers to be as accurate as possible. I often say, look, we're not watching a documentary. We're watching a movie for entertainment. The filmmakers have to have leeway. Their number one responsibility is not to make the movie as accurate as possible. Their number one responsibility is to make the best movie possible. And if that means you need to take some creative license, then you take some creative license, right? However, as with everything, that's got to be, in everything in life, that's got to be in moderation. Like, for instance, you want to make a movie about John F. Kennedy? Okay, fine, make a movie about John F. Kennedy. Maybe you play with the fact that, well, in this movie about John F. Kennedy, his best friend was a woman named Dolores. But in real life, his best friend was a guy named Jack. Jack's a bad example. Freddie. In real life, his best friend's name was Freddie, but in the movie, you make his best friend some woman named Dolores that he had a good friendship with. Fine. I don't know the history of the real John F. Kennedy, so I'm just making this up. In the real John F. Kennedy life, his first job was as a paperboy. In the movie, you say his first job was as a little kid working in a car factory. Fine. These are all points of minutia within the overall story. What changes, though, is you say, if this is based on a true story and you're making a story about the life of John F. Kennedy, you don't say, no, he doesn't go on to become president of the United States. He goes on to become a dolphin trainer at Aqualand. That's a completely different situation. Playing around with certain details in the story to make for a better story or to help your narrative flow goes, that's fine. But with any based on a true story, there are certain events that are key that you cannot play around with. Like whether in the Steve Jobs movie, I think I remember there being some controversy. Steve Jobs' important conversation with Steve Wozniak didn't happen in this garage. It happened in a McDonald's in San Bernardino. Everybody knows that. Well, who cares where the conversation happened? Little things like that. But talking about big key core elements like John F. Kennedy goes on to become president. You can't make a movie that's based on a true story about John F. Kennedy and say he goes on to become a dolphin trainer at Aqualand. You can't do that. Those are two completely different situations. With something like Freddie Mercury, you want to play around with, hey, the name of his, first music manager was Dutch instead of Mitch. Hey, you want to say that his first concert was in a bar called The Oyster instead of in some bar somewhere off in Tahiti. You want to play around with things like that, that's fine, whatever to tell your major story. The fact of the matter, though, is Freddie Mercury's sexuality was a pretty core, controversial, main linchpin part of who and what he was. It's a major thing. It is a defining element of who Freddie Mercury was. If you're telling the story, if you're making a movie and you're telling the story of Freddie Mercury, there are certain things you can't, ditch around. You can't get around the fact that he played in a band called Queen. You can't make a movie about Freddie Mercury and not touch on the subject of this little band he was in called Queen. You can't get around that. You can't make a movie about Freddie Mercury and not acknowledge the fact that he was a singer. No, in our Freddie Mercury movie, he makes hoodie jackets. Yeah, that's what this Freddie Mercury does. Based on the true story of Freddie Mercury, and he's not a singer, he makes hoodie jackets. You can't do that. And if you're making a movie about Freddie Mercury, you cannot tiptoe around the fact that he was gay. You can't. That's a core thing of who he was. And what made him, partially what made him such a controversial figure. You can't get around that. So you can't compare situations like other true life movies where minor details are changed to fit this, and this. Like, for instance, something like The Greatest Show. The Greatest Showman was never meant to be a biography. The Greatest Showman is a pure musical show. It's just a musical movie. It's not even really based. It's kind of inspired by a true figure, but it's not even based on a real figure. The Greatest Showman was never meant as a biography on the life of P.T. Barnum. It was never meant as a biography. So yeah, the differences between filmmakers who make movies based on true stories, taking liberties with minutiae and with certain details to help tell their story, that's fine. But as in the case with the John F. Kennedy thing or whatever, there are certain things that have to become cornerstones of the story that you cannot mess with. Abraham Lincoln became president of the United States. You can't do an Abe Lincoln movie and not acknowledge that. You can't make a Freddie Mercury movie and not acknowledge that he was in this little band called Queen, nor can you dance around the fact that the core part of his personality was that, and one of the main controversial things about him was that he was a homosexual man. You can't tiptoe around that and say you're based on a true story. So that's why there are two completely different situations, in my opinion, at least at any rate. All right, guys, that'll do it for the live questions. We saved a few minutes here to take some of or that'll do for the emailed question. We've saved a few minutes, though, to take some of your live questions, so let's dive into those right now. First one comes from Zombatron5678, says, wait, Drax was in Infinity War? I must not have seen him. Yeah, he wasn't in a whole hell of a lot of it, was he? Ben Rayner writes, important question. Why is Dom Toretto? That's a Drax the Destroyer joke. I have a better question. Why is Dom Toretto? Jake C. writes, hey, John, love the show. Thank you so much. Do you mind explaining why, in your opinion, Deadpool's mouth being sewn shut betrays the character where Batman killing doesn't? Well, it's simple. Batman in the comic books is killed many times. I don't know why some people refuse to acknowledge that. Batman in the comic books is killed many times. On top of that, again, we're talking about details, things about them versus core things about them. When you think of Deadpool, his main defining thing is he is the merc with a mouth. That's his main defining thing. That is what defines Deadpool. Nothing defines Deadpool more than his mouth. Nothing defines him more than his mouth. You cannot say the same thing about Batman. You cannot say, if you walk up to the average person in the street and go, when you think Batman, what's the first thing you think of? They'll say vigilante. They'll say Dark Knight. They'll say, superhero without powers. They'll say blah, blah, blah. And maybe 5% of the people on the street will say, he's a superhero who doesn't kill. Maybe 5%. If you just grab random people on the street and say, Batman, first thing that comes to your mind. Maybe 5% will go, he's a superhero who doesn't kill. It'll probably be a smaller percentage than that. It's nowhere near as much of a core identity thing. It's a part of what is an understood identity thing of Batman. There's no denying that. But it's not in the top 3. Like, if you go out on the street, survey 1,000 people, first thing you think of when you think of Batman doesn't kill isn't one of the things that'll come in the top 5. I doubt it'll even come in the top 7, 8, 9, or 10 for most average people. Deadpool, his humor, his lip, anything that totally revolves around the fact that some people will say he can't die. That's the other big one. But he is the merc with a mouth. That's what he is. So, and again, the movies are different from the comic books. And that's the argument I always had with people. Look, in Batman versus Superman, so many people complaining Batman killed people. Guess what? This Batman does. This Batman, this particular character, who is not the comic book character, this particular character, he has become jaded and bitter and broken and angry. And if people are trying to kill him, in the course of doing his stuff, if they die, they die. The same with every other superhero out there. So, yeah, I'd say there's a major fundament. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't have a problem with Batman killing in the movies. You can have a problem with that. That's totally fine. I know several people who have a problem with Batman killing in the movies. But comparing the merc with a mouth situation, having a Deadpool in a movie for 15 minutes and most of his screen time is spent with his mouth sewn shut is a completely different thing and on a completely different level than, say, Batman killing in the movies. So at least that's the way it is to me. It might be different for you, and that's totally fine, but that's just the way it is for me. Jacob Vanco writes, are Star Wars expectations too unrealistic? I don't know. I mean, look, Star Wars expectations are high, but it is the most important film franchise in the history of cinema. It just is. The Star Wars franchise is the most important film franchise in the history of cinema. And if you as a franchise are going to lay claim to that, then you have to accept that what comes along with that are very, very high expectations. Both high expectations for how good you expect the movies to be, and high expectations for how successful you think they should be at the box office. Like, if you're going to be a film franchise that lays claim to the fact, and they are, it is the most important film franchise in film history, then you have to accept that what comes along with that is high expectations for quality, high expectations for financial success. Now, you also have to keep in mind, like, for instance, this is why I've been telling people forever that Solo is not going to be $1 billion movie. It's because it's a spin-off, it's this, and this, but it still should have been way more successful than it was. I mean, I never I told people, and they're like, even when the tracking numbers came out for 150, I went, really? I mean, okay, but I have a hard time seeing it come over 100. It still should have done way better than 83. And that's why when people say, look, there's no dancing around it. When a film loses money, that's a financial failure. That is a failure. If a film loses the studio money, it is a financial failure. And Solo is going to lose the studio money. It's going to be the first Star Wars film ever to lose the studio money. There's no way around it. Now, I think it's a good movie, but you can't dance around the fact that financially it's a failure. I mean, it's not a failure yet because it's not done its theatrical run. But this movie needs to make $600 to $650 million to break even, and it's not going to. And so, are expectations high? Yes. But I think they are justifiably high. And yeah, so I'm actually going to say that no, I don't think they're unrealistically high. I think people have super high expectations, and they have the right to have super high expectations because this is Star Wars, and the expectations should be high. So anyway, that's just my thought. John Dillon writes, hey, John, I'm a composer, musician. I just landed my first feature film scoring gig. I'm super excited. Just want to share. That's awesome, man. It's always great whenever somebody's chasing their dream and they get their first break and something like that. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, John. Let's see. Oops, a little bit of a jump. Okay, Rodrigo Ortiz writes, do you consider John Bernthal an A-lister? Oh, no. John Bernthal is not an A-lister. He's nowhere near it. Don't get me wrong. John Bernthal is a tremendously talented dude, and I love seeing him pop up in just about anything. Whether he's popping up in, Punisher, or he's popping up in Baby Driver, or he's popping up in The Accountant, or he's popping up in Wind River, or wherever he's popping up. I love John Bernthal. But there's nobody can say with a straight face that he's an A-list. You don't, like, when you think A-listers, you are thinking Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, Denzel Washington. You're thinking those are A-listers. John Bernthal is not on that list yet. And that's no disrespect to John Bernthal. I'm a huge John Bernthal fan. But no, he's not an A-lister. Adrian Avalar writes, how much do hardcore fans say to Marvel or Star Wars contribute? I can't help but think some of us online think we're a tad bigger than we really are, while I still see us as in a bit of a bubble. No, it's true. It's true. One of the biggest things, here's what I talk about all the time. It's basically like a biodome syndrome. What do you mean by biodome syndrome? Well, I've heard this term used before, and I think it really applies to a lot of film fandom. Biodome syndrome is when you are in a certain bubble, and we're all in certain bubbles in certain circles. We all are. But when you're in a certain bubble or circle, the biodome syndrome is if you and other people in your bubble think one thing, we tell ourselves in our heads, since everybody I know thinks this way, that means everybody thinks this way. When the reality is there are hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of other bubbles that may think completely differently. Right? So you get a certain bubble. This was a great example. There was this certain bubble of people, right or wrong, that had this petition going to get a Zack Snyder cut of the Superman movie released, right? And they thought everybody in the world was on board with this, and they weren't. And they got like 200 or close to 200,000 signatures on this thing. They thought that meant, see, all of us. And there were people in this bubble who thought there were millions and millions and millions of people out there who thought the same way they did. And then, I did the math on it, and I talked on the show, said, guys, with every signature you've got on this thing, even if they're all legitimate signatures, you represent about 1.3% of the people who actually went to go see the movie. That's a bubble burster. And I think those of us who inhabit online, we go to the online chat forums, we talk on YouTube videos, we listen to our podcasts, we forget that we are also in a certain bubble. And we represent a small fraction of what the larger general movie-going audience is. But it's the biodome syndrome. We think because the people we interact with think one way, therefore everybody. Like, you ask somebody who lives in San Francisco, California, everybody thinks Trump is an idiot because everybody they know thinks Trump is an idiot. You ask somebody who lives somewhere in Idaho, if I think that went red, I'm not really sure, but somebody in Idaho where everybody around there is a Trump supporter, and they'll just think everybody's a Trump supporter. I mean, because of that's it. We have our biodome syndrome way of thinking. And you're absolutely right, Adrian. We all do it. We all do it. This is not one particular group that's guilty of this. We all do this to one degree or another. We think we represent a bigger segment than we really do because the people we all talk to and hang around with, whether it's online or in person, we all think the same way. That means everybody does. And we all do it. We all do it. But yes, we in the online community, we are in a certain bubble, and we represent only a certain percentage of the overall film fandom and what they really think. So it is something that we all constantly have to remind ourselves of. Absolutely. And like I said, we're all guilty of it. We all do it. Luis David writes, it looks like DC and Warner Brothers are bringing out the big guns by getting Industrial Light and Magic to do the visual effects for Aquaman, which is a great movie. I mean, ILM works on a lot of movies. I kid you not. I had somebody actually tweet at me earlier today that said, hey, John, how come you're not doing a story on Aquaman getting ILM bias? And I'm like, wait a minute. Point me when did I start movie blogging? In 2003. In my 15 years of doing movie blogging, oh my God, this June, I think June 5th is going to be my 15th anniversary of doing online film punditry. Because I did my first post on the movie blog, I believe it was June 5th, 2003. I'll have to go back and double check. But at any rate, I said, go back in my 15 years of doing this, point me to one story I've ever done about such and such visual effects company signs on to do the effects of such a movie. I've never done that as a story. Why would I start now? It was just, and they also said, and Aquaman moved a week. How come you didn't do a story about that? Point me to one time I've done a story on a movie that's moved 1 week more than 7 months in advance. Like if it was 2 months till the movie was coming out and it moved up a week, I'd be doing a story about that. But the movie's still 7 months away. It moves a week. It moves 2 weeks, forward or backwards. It's not a story to talk about. But no, hey, getting ILM on board to do visual effects is nothing but a good thing. And listen, I wasn't there myself. I was supposed to be there. I wasn't there myself, but they showed a bunch of footage of Aquaman at CinemaCon, and all the reports I heard were very positive. Was this everything? Now, granted, it's just certain segments of footage, and it can be taken out of context, but I hadn't heard one bad thing about it. Everything I've heard about the Aquaman footage they showed at CinemaCon was all good. So, and hey, James Wan, Jason Momoa, why not have some optimism about this thing? This thing could be pretty good. So let's just keep our fingers crossed. Maximum 44T writes, and I just got time for 2 more questions here, guys. Thoughts on the 2 extra Lucifer episodes? I loved the one with Azrael, with the Ray Ray character. I loved that episode. Loved it. It just made me all the more angry that they've canceled this series because I would love that Azrael character to become a recurring character on the show. Oh my God, she was so good. Honestly, wasn't so big on the alternate timeline episode. Honestly, wasn't that big. It had its moments. It had some very, very funny moments, but honestly, wasn't that big on it. But the Azrael one, loved it. Completely ate that one up. Okay, Razor Edge Frisbee writes, you get one hand-to-hand combat scene in a comic book movie to watch on loop for a whole year. Batman taking out the KG Beast henchman in Batman vs. Superman. Logan opening scene. Ooh, that's pretty good. Cap versus Bucky on the highway in Winter Soldier. Which one? See, I would also throw in there the Iron Man, Winter Soldier, Captain America fight in Civil War, but, I think I'm going with the Batman one. Oh God, I love that scene. I love that scene so much. I absolutely adore that scene. So yeah, I'm going to go with the Batman one. All right, guys. Hey, listen, if you've sent in a live question, don't worry. Just like this morning, I put up a companion video. I'm going to take all the live questions you guys have sent that I don't have time to get around to, and I will include it in my next companion video. All right, guys, that will do it for me for today on the John Campea Show. Listen, do me a favor. If you're somebody who enjoys watching my shows, do me a favor and head on over to www.patreon.com/JohnCampea. There you get the information about what it means to be a Patreon supporter, how being a Patreon supporter keeps this show on the air, and also the benefits of being a Patreon supporter. Benefits like we have Star Wars talk exclusively for our Patreon supporters on our Facebook group. We have audio-only versions of the John Campea Show and of Open Mic. And obviously there's a Facebook group, some behind-the-scenes videos, things like that. And maybe you'll want to become a Patreon supporter too. And if you do, that's awesome. And if not, that's perfectly fine. I'm just super humbled and glad that you're here being a film fan with us. All right, guys, that'll do it for me for right now. Don't forget, I'll be back at 2 o'clock this afternoon for Open Mic. Thanks a lot for joining me. My name's John Campea, and until the next video, bye-bye.